All right, so today we are talking about one-point perspective, and we are eventually going to develop that into the finalized project. Once again, is creating your name in one-point perspective using what we have learned from color theory. Color theory will include the idea of mixing colors together to create those neutral values. So that will be mixing your complementary colors, which are red and green, to create that neutral gray, blue and orange, as well as yellow and violet. But today we're going to understand the one-point perspective, and then we're going to put those two skills together. So what we want to do, pressing lightly, we always want to start our drawings by pressing lightly, is having a straight edge. If you have a ruler, you may use that. If you do not have a ruler, you can use anything that's got a straight edge. So just lining it up. We're not measuring anything for this project. We're just making sure we have a straight line. Okay, so on your piece of paper, once again, pressing lightly, you're just going to take your pencil and go all the way across. If you have your supplies, I always start my drawings with an HB. It's not too dark, it's not too light, and I am pressing fairly light enough so I can erase anything that needs to be erased. So now I have my line here. Once again, we learned last class that that is the horizon line, okay, your horizon line, where sky meets ground. So go ahead and follow along and place that in there for me. All right, now that we have our horizon line, once again, where the sky meets the ground, where the sky meets the earth, if you will, we also understand the idea of the horizon line being your eyesight when you're inside. So remember that room example I had, everything went to the back wall vanishing point. The horizon line is where your eyesight level is for when you're inside. Okay, then we're going to create a dot in the middle, and this is your vanishing point. So what you're going to just do is create one dot right in the middle. And once again, we are working with 1 point perspective. When you have 1 point perspective, you're making 1 point. If we were to do 2 point perspective, which we will next week, you would have 2 dots, and then the lines would converge that way. But right now, we're just focusing on 1 point perspective. So here we have our horizon line. In the dot in the middle, it doesn't have to be perfectly centered in the middle, but we need to make sure that that dot is on the horizon line. It can't be above, it can't be below, it must be on the line physically. Okay, so what we're going to do is understand how things go to that vanishing point in 1 point perspective, both above, below, and on the horizon line. Okay, so what you're going to do is we're going to create 3 boxes to start, and then we'll create other shapes and place those in there. So what we're going to do is we'll start below, because why not? Try your best to make a square. If you do have that straight edge item, you may do so. I am going to use pen so you are able to all see it a little better. You should be using pencil. Okay, so if you have a straight edge, you may use it. If not, that's fine as well. So I'm just going to make a square to the best of my ability. If you just want to freehand it, that's fine as well right now, just because we're still just learning the concept. I'm just making a 1.5 inch square. Once again, measurements don't need to be a factor in this. All right, now that you have your square, what we're going to do is turn that square into a cube. So a square is a shape. That is one of your elements of art: line, shape, form, color, texture, value, and space. Shape is a two-dimensional flat object. What we want to do is put this square into 1 point perspective, which will then turn it into a cube, which is a form. Okay, so what we're going to do is take all of our corners with your straight edge, or to the best of your ability if you don't have one, to that vanishing point. Now you want to make sure you're pressing lightly, because we don't know how far we're going to take it back quite yet. So I'm just going to use pencil. You should all be using pencil as well, but I will go back over with ink so you are able to see it better. Taking that point to each corner. The only corners you take to the vanishing point are the ones that are directly connected or can directly connect to the vanishing point itself. Okay, I wouldn't, unless this was a clear object, I would not take this corner to the vanishing point because it's a physical cube. Okay, you can't see the back side of the object. If you want to, just for better understanding and concept, you may do that. It could confuse you a little bit as well, but the three corners here are going to the vanishing point because I will not see the backside. You can think of a die or dice. When you roll a dice, you only see the sides that you can physically see with your eyeballs, and you can't see the backside. You know the backside is there, but you can't physically see it. All right, so now what we need to do is turn this into a cube. So I'm going to switch back to my ink just so you guys can see it better through the video. But you always want to mimic the exact same line or the exact same angle as to what was created. So I'm going to take this line here, and depending on how far I go back is how big or small my square / rectangle will be, whatever I do. So I'm going to just shift right back, and we'll say I'll go that far because I can, and why not? Okay, so that angle is the same as that angle. Now with my straight edge, or with the best of my ability, I'm going to rotate and line that perfectly up with this vertical line and shift right over until I get to where the horizontal line meets the diagonal, and then just go straight down. Okay, horizontal lines are always perfectly horizontal or left to right with the horizon line. Vertical lines are always perfectly vertical, up and down. And then your lines going to the vanishing point are always at a diagonal going to the vanishing point, depending on where they're located around your paper. Okay, so you should have something that has accomplished this. Once again, I'm just going to go over with ink so you guys can see it better. With my straight edge, once again, does not necessarily need to be a ruler. We're not measuring anything. Okay, and as always, we are always pressing lightly with our pencil. Now I can erase all those extra lines, so go ahead and do this with me so you have understanding of how the square turned into a cube, or the shape into a form, in 1 point perspective. Okay, and there you have a box in 1 point perspective. Understanding where the light sources may be coming from, so then you could develop those values and make it a three-dimensional form on a two-dimensional flat surface, which is your paper. Okay, whenever you have a cube in light, there's always going to be a light side. So this is referencing the fact that my light source is coming from above, highlighted the most on the top. The light is kind of wrapping around the edge to develop a medium value here, and then your darkest value is on the back side from the light source coming that way. Okay, you don't have to shade it. You can if you want to practice. This is what we're going to do when we develop our names. But we're going to do it through the use of color and using complementary colors once again to develop that neutral gray and not just always resort to black. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do one above the horizon line. So we have one already below. Now we're going to go above. Anything below the horizon line goes up to the vanishing point. Anything above the horizon line goes down to the vanishing point. So let's go ahead and do that on the other side. So just kind of throw a cube together real quick, or a rectangle. I'll do a rectangle this time around. whatever floats your boat. Four-sided object. Okay. Now, once again, we have an object above the horizon line, so therefore we're going to go take it down. I'm taking it all the way to the vanishing point because I don't know how big this object is quite yet. And I'm pressing lightly so I can erase all my lines that are no longer needed. Okay. Horizontal line always stays horizontal. Shift straight down. Connect it from that angled line to that angled line from each of the corners. Rotate my straight edge. Line it up with the vertical line. Vertical lines are always vertical. Shift it over till you get to where this corner is met. Okay. And just for reassurance purposes, I'm going to go over mine in ink again with the lines that we will keep. And then, since I press lightly with my HB pencil, I am able to fully erase my lines that are no longer needed. So once again, if our light source was coming from over here, that means this side would be the highlighted side. This side would be the middle value. And then the underside is under the object, under and away from the light source. So therefore, that would be the darkest value. And we will accomplish this idea with color. If you want to practice now, once again, you may. It takes 30 seconds to shade your box or blend it using a blending technique. You could use hatching, cross-hatching, all the different mark making techniques you learned from drawing one, whatever you enjoy most. Or you don't have to do it, that's fine as well. Okay, now we are going to put something on the horizon line. So let's go ahead and do, let's do your best shot at a hexagon. Okay, so what we have our horizon line here. Once again, we press lightly for the horizon line because if something's on top, say if you add trees or a mountain, say you don't have to draw this, but this is your horizon line and you had a mountain range kind of going off there, you wouldn't want this horizon line here anymore because the mountain might be covering it. Okay, your mountain might came down here and then across, and then your sky here, or your ground and sky meet, so then you would erase. Once again, you don't have to do that, I'm just showing you. And then maybe your water, and maybe you got some trees growing. I don't know. Whatever the case may be. Water, Rocky Mountains. All right, so what we're going to do now, I'll do it on this side, is going to put a hexagon. I'll just freehand it so you can just watch me quickly do it. Hexagon has 6 sides, so I'm going to go down, across, over, over. Okay, so now I've got my hexagon. Notice that the line is still going through. Now we can erase that line because the hexagon overlaps the horizon line. Okay, then you need to take your corners that physically could touch with your straight edge to the vanishing point. So I wouldn't take this line here. We technically just erased that one that would go to the vanishing point. So I already have my horizon line here, but I'll just reinforce that again just to understand the concept. Then I'm going to take this corner at the bottom. Once again, when things are below the vanishing point horizon line, they go up. And when things are above, they go down. Okay, this time we need to mimic the angle of what the shape is doing. So I've got the angle of, I'll do it this way. The angle of my hexagon is here. I'm going to shift over however big I want to make this object, and then go from that line to that line and stop. Then I need to create this angle here, shift straight over, stop when I get to the intersecting point, and go down. Okay, and then I'll, once again, just for me with ink, reinforce the lines that create our hexagon. Okay, then I can erase my extra lines that I press lightly. I would keep the middle one because that is our horizon line, and we can keep that. And then finally, understand where your light source is coming from, and then we can shade it to make it look like a form or a three-dimensional object. Just real quick. All right, so we'll do two more objects and understand a few more things. All right, so what we're going to do now is let's create a blob of some sorts. Okay, so if you want to try and mimic this shape as best you can, that I'm going to do. I don't know, we'll do like a blob like that. So now this might be a little confusing because you're like, well, it doesn't have any corners that I would take to the vanishing point as we have with all of our angular shapes here. Okay, all these are very geometrical shapes. This one is more organic, so it's more just whimsical and free-flowing and whatnot. So the way we take our objects like this to the vanishing point is always the outermost portion of the rounded part. Okay, so what I mean by that is I would line my straight edge up with the most outer part of the little loop-de-loop. Line it up with the vanishing point and do the same thing just as if it were a corner like on our cubes. Okay, so very lightly take that to the most outer part. Okay, then I have the most outer part here. Most outer part here. Once again, only using spots that line up and would physically connect and touch. I don't have to do it up here because this portion would be behind. Now I would do it right here because nothing interferes as soon as I start making this line. So see how I can draw like that straight to the vanishing point. Because as soon as you start the line, then you need to draw it. If you would start the line behind the object, then you don't need to draw it. And then finally, we have the most outer one right here. Okay, now, just like we did with mimicking the diagonal lines or the horizontal vertical lines, once again, vertical, vertical, horizontal, horizontal, vertical, 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 horizontal, 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 angle, 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 horizontal, horizontal, diagonal, 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 diagonal. So they're all mimicking each other, especially when they're geometric shapes. Now this, once again, is more organic and free-flowing. So what you do now is, depending on how distant you want this object to be, you could do it really close, therefore it would be a skinnier item. If you went all the way down here and mimicked, then it would be a much bigger item. So here we have the curve, and we want to mimic that curve. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit far away, make it a semi-big object, and try my best to do exactly what that curve looks like. Okay. Then I'm going to mimic this. I want to go the same distance. So So maybe I could take my pencil and use it as a measuring tool and go down. So I would start right about here. Mimic that same shape, and then make sure that it connects with where those, just like how these needed to connect, this like corner right here, this corner right here needed to connect. Now we need to make sure that that connects as well. So swoop down and connect. Same thing here. Understand how far away. Come up. This might go in and then comes down and connects. So then we can get rid of these extra lines here. Don't need those anymore. Need to pop out more. Okay, don't need these lines anymore. Let's round this guy out. Mimic that shape. Okay, and then we also need to mimic this shape. So this was just a starting point, and now we can come in and swoop around. Once again, we are always pressing lightly, so we are able to fully erase what's going on. Let's do a little touch up, because I want this kind of shape to mimic exactly that. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe push that further right there. I think we are on track. Okay, so then once again, if you were to develop value on this time the value could mimic like the flowing trend of the object. So it would be darker. Shadows are always darker closest to the object. So I can push my shadow darker here and then blend it out. If I were going to be super particular, I would obviously use my full range of pencils. Your HB, your H's, and your B's. B's being your darker pencils because they have darker lead because the lead is softer and applies to the paper more easily versus your harder pencils, which are your H's. And since the lead is harder, it applies less easily onto the paper, so therefore it is lighter. Okay, but just for time's sake, and this is just practice, I'm just going through and pressing harder with my HB and developing those darker values and pressing lighter for my lighter values. Okay, so the last item that we're going to do is going to be the first letter of your first name. So this is going to be able to give you practice. This is all fresh in your mind, so hopefully you should thrive on this, but you're going to make your letter into a block letter. And you're going to do that down here in the opposite corner that we have not worked on so far. So my first name is Keith, so I start with a K. If you have a straight edge and you want to be super particular about it, you may do so, but my name, or I want to create my name in like block letters or bubble letters. You can kind of do either or. If you do a bubble letter, it'll be similar to this, how it matches up with the outsidemost curves, versus block letters, which will be very angular. So I'm going to do a block letter. A K has lots of nooks and crannies going on, so just for time's sake, I'm going to try my best to draw it freehand. Once again, being a block letter, and I'm drawing it below the horizon line, so therefore it will need to come up towards the vanishing point. making sure everything is kind of equal in size. Okay, so there I have my K. Then I would take, once again, I'm going to have a lot going on. So I'm going to line my straight edge up with my vanishing point, and every line or corner will become a line towards the vanishing point, pressing lightly because I will be erasing portions of it. Okay, so now you can see here my K, every corner that could go to the vanishing point, I've taken to the vanishing point. This, I probably didn't draw it in the most greatest area because this I can't take to the vanishing point because it basically lines up with the vanishing point. And then this one I can't take there, so it does look, well, I guess I could actually, no. Here, I'll reposition it. So once again, right now you are working on your first letter of your first name. Let's see if that works. No, that didn't do anything. Okay. So it's a little difficult to see, but you see this little area right here. I will shade that in right now because I'm going to shade in the rest of it. But you can see there how that now you can barely see just the littlest bit that's going to the vanishing point because this portion right here didn't get immediately overlapped with my line to the vanishing point. So therefore I did draw it and it goes all the way back. Okay, now I'm going to understand how big my K is going to be. So I'm going to go straight down once again. This is a vertical line, so I'm going to recreate that with a vertical line. I have a horizontal line here, so I'm going to shift up to where my vertical line intersected with my angular line. And inside that little section, I'm going to create my horizontal line that meets up and mimics that. Then I have this line, and I'm going to take it up just as high as my last one. Create that. Okay. And then you have this like open area, which might look a little confusing. So we don't need these lines anymore. So I'm going to try and clean it up for you to better understand. Okay, so see how funny this looks? Because I'm like, I don't know. I don't like, do I go straight down? Do I go across? What do I do? Remember, you always want to mimic what's going on. So I mimicked the vertical line here. I mimicked the horizontal line here, as well as here. Now I need to mimic this line. So once again, I'll take my straight edge, shift it over to where that corner is created, and mimic that. Okay, so that might have been a little confusing. Hopefully you understood that. You're just always wanting, if the lines aren't going to the vanishing point, you always want to mimic the line that they were created from. So we mimicked this shape here. We mimicked this angle here with that angle there. This angle here with that angle there. Horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. Angle, 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 the vanishing point. Vertical, vertical, vertical. Okay, then I could understand where my light source is coming from and develop those values to reinforce the idea of form through the use of highlights and shadows. Once again, values. Value is one of your elements of art. And then we have successfully created a letter for practice. The first letter of your first name, which you will be doing in color next time around, and enhancing your understanding of color theory. Okay, and there you have now a greater understanding of 1-point perspective. I'll go over all these lines that are mimicked. So when we are all together on Monday, we will make sure you hang on to these pieces of paper as you should have been following along. On Monday, I'll show you how to upload pictures to your website and start to understand how we are going to submit our projects when they are done. So be aware that that's going to be taking place on Monday, so don't throw these away or lose them. And then also make sure if you are an at-home learner, you are figuring out a time or having someone come pick up your supplies, as we need to make sure we have those for next week so we can get started on our finals of this with color theory included, the colored pencils, and go from there. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns for me at the moment? All right. Thank you for participating today. And once again, we will photograph these and upload them to our website on Monday when we are all virtually learning together.